Good morning. Of course, summer vacations are something everyone enjoys, everyone looks forward to. But as gas prices are going up, more people are changing or maybe considering changing those vacation plans. Whether you're going on a road trip, taking a plane, riding the train, it'll cost you more this year compared to last. And add up the upcharges for food and lodging, you're really going to be feeling the pinch. Here to get real about summer vacations and the impact of high gas prices is Dr. Brian Marks. He's a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics and Business Analytics at the University of New Haven. Dr. Marks, thanks for being with us. I want to ask you this to start. Is this something we're going to feel no matter what we're doing this summer?
Unfortunately, in all aspects in everyday life, no matter whether you're thinking about vacation or even a staycation, we're going to see increased prices.
All right, so let's kind of break down the different categories. Obviously, the easy one, we're getting close now to Memorial Day weekend. Many people may plan to load up the family in the station wagon and head somewhere for an old-fashioned road trip. Of course, that gas you're putting in your tank is going to be more expensive. Is that going to be a big impact, you think, on how many people we see heading out on the roads?
Well, I think it's going to be a balancing act, but I do anticipate we are going to see a lot of people on the road because costs are increasing across the board. So that road trip may look better and better because you can control at least some of the aspects of the costs associated with travel.
I looked up some statistics before we spoke. GasBuddy did a survey and said 58% of people said they planned some sort of road trip this summer, which sounds pretty good, sounds optimistic. It's up from last year when COVID was still having a big impact, but it's way down compared to 2019 before the pandemic. I know there's a lot of factors at play here. And when you look at something as an economics professor, how do you sort that out? What's COVID? What's people just wanting to be back to normal? And what's people not wanting to pay for gas?
Well, unfortunately, it's very nuanced and it all comes together. We cannot help but see that it's going to impact everything. So, yes, part of it is pent up demand from the pandemic where people were able to save money and therefore are willing to spend. But when we look at the substitution effect, if you will, are we going to be in our cars or are we going to travel by air? If we start traveling by air, it involves airline fees, it involves food, it involves a lot of other things that are outside of our control, where driving one's own automobile or camper may be more cost effective, at least in the near term.
More cost effective compared to all those other things, but certainly a big difference from last year. The average gas price here is still a week away from Memorial Day, 51% higher than it was a year ago. That's something that's easy to see. You put that credit card in the pump or you go pay cash inside and it's just going to cost you more to fill up that tank. Is there anything we're seeing on the horizon that might say maybe postpone that road trip till July or August? Or do you think if you're going, just go and it's going to be expensive?
I think we need to anticipate that the prices are going to be higher. And if you've made your plans, stick with it. One could anticipate we're going to see a continued increase in gasoline prices. And unfortunately, we're going to see the rolling off of some of the excise tax holidays or other short-term gimmicks, if you will, associated with it as we move into the summer season. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and go forward and realize you may not have disposable income to spend elsewhere. But people are looking to get out after the pandemic, although we're still in a pandemic, but in a different stage. And so if you haven't made plans, then you may want to reconsider what plans you may make. But if you've already made your plans, buckle up, go, enjoy, and realize it's going to have an impact going forward.
What about some of those things you mentioned, them things that the government can do, gas tax holidays and things like that? Does that make sense? Obviously, people, I guess everybody likes to have, the government come in and say, hey, you got to pay a little bit less for something. But as a long-term effect on the economy, is it a sensible, wise economic move?
So in my opinion, I would view these things such as an excise gas holiday as a short-term gimmick that may help people in the short run, but in the long run, it's not really addressing the fundamental concerns associated with fuel and energy prices in general. We need, as a country, a long-term strategy to deal with energy. And until we reach such a policy prescription that could actually help, whether it's a combination of fossil fuels and renewables, short-term gimmicks are going to be thrown out right and left, but really not have the impact that people are hoping for. In the state of Connecticut, we have had our 25-cent gas excise tax gas holiday, and we're still seeing the price of gasoline increase because of supply and demand factors, including not just the pandemic and a shift in demand, but because of war in the Ukraine and its cascading effects. And a gimmick is not a solution in the long term. And we can see that quite clearly when it comes to food. We can't ignore the increasing in food prices that we're all experiencing.
Well, and certainly those food prices go up because it costs more to get that food to the supermarket. It costs you more to get to the supermarket and buy it. We saw some maybe startling, I think, economic news from big retailers like Walmart and Target over the past week saying sales were really down. Customers were coming to the store, but maybe not buying as much. Does it have a ripple effect? I mean, we have you here to talk about summer vacation, but so long as we've got an expert here, does this really affect everything?
Yeah, the pandemic certainly reminded us all of the pre-existing conditions we had in the supply chain, the weaknesses there. Now, as we're rolling out, those weaknesses still exist, and they're being exacerbated by various other factors. And it's not just vacations, it's going to be everything. Every day I go to the gas pump, I see it. Every day I go to the grocery store, I see it. Every time I turn on the news, I hear it. This is what's going on in our economy right now. Now, I'd like to be optimistic that we can look forward and watch what the Federal Reserve will be doing. The Federal Reserve has been tapping on the brakes and maybe pushing down harder on the brakes. We're trying for a soft landing. We have to see what happens, but certainly there is a higher risk of recession if you were to look at 2023. And so that's raising concerns as well.
I just want to ask you one more thing. In the TV business, we call this teasing ahead. We've got Connecticut's labor commissioner coming up in our next segment. And I want to ask you, one of the things we've heard as far as summer travel is things like airlines not having enough pilots and ground crews and things like that to staff enough flights, seeing cancellations, hotels not getting enough people, the hospitality industry in whole not having enough employees. How big of a problem is that as we head into summer? We're going to ask about the Connecticut issue coming up, but just generally, what are you seeing about employees?
So let me start off this way. I want to give you some optimistic news. For those college students who are looking for jobs, I would expect no college student should be able to turn around and say there was no job opportunity for me. The leisure hospitality industry and many others are screaming for help. And so there is an opportunity for that. In the meantime, from the economic standpoint as well, we are confronted with labor shortages causing bottlenecks. So all of that is going to be with us for a little bit longer. And we're going to have to manage through that. And it's not binary. You just can't flip a switch and say all is well and good again. We've seen an increase in demand. We've seen constraints on the supply side. And all this is impacting everything. Labor, energy, food, which impacts air travel, hotel, rental cars, and it will even impact my staycation.
All right, well, we'll focus on the positive news. College students, you can get any job you want. You just got to ride your bike there. It'll be expensive. Brian Marks, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics and Business Analytics. We appreciate you being with us, and we will hopefully have you back here on CT22 again in the future.